Equal parts horror, comedy, and surreal art piece, House is a movie that does not play by traditional roles. Directed by Nobuhiko Obyashi, they tell a tale and answer an important question in film. What if my dream tasted like cotton candy? A trippy dreamscape of abstract and absurdist horror seen through a kaleidoscope of vibrant colors and chroma key. A movie, nay, an experience. One that may have inspired a lot of future works, such as Sweet Home, which then inspired Resident Evil, and heavily rumored that it may have also inspired The Black Parade. I'm failed Wendigoon clone number 431, otherwise known as the Lorelock, and I'm here to talk to you today about my personal favorite cult Halloween classic, 1977's Hausu. To understand why this film is a peyote-style dreamscape, we need to talk a little bit about Obyashi and Obyashi's history and influences. Obyashi got his start making commercials, and his works at the time were equally odd, so seeing how odd this film gets, it's not hard to see where those influences came from. For the film, in terms of pre-production, the script was written with the movie Jaws in mind. Because when I think of the Japanese equivalent to Jaws, personally I think of the infamous decapitated head butt-biting scene from House. They wanted to replicate Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, so House was born out of this desire. The film was greenlit after being presented to Toho, however, no directors at Toho wanted to direct the movie because they felt it would be a career killer. Since House and Godzilla are both done by Toho, I'm going with the headcanon that House and Godzilla are in the same universe. Toho, release Auntie vs. Godzilla, or I will. Initially, Obyashi was turned down to be the director, but after some pushing and success of related radio dramas, Toho relented and Obyashi was brought on. The peyote-like sequences in the film itself were in part thanks to Obyashi's young daughter. 10-year-old Chigumi Obyashi was one of the major parts of writing the story for Hausu. Nobuhiko would have Chigumi tell him things that she feared as a child, like futons falling on them, pianos eating people's hands, and many other things. In an interview, Obyashi would say he sought out his daughter because, quote, adults only think about things they can understand. Everything stays on that boring human level, while children can come up with things that can't be explained. The basic setup for the movie and cast goes like this. A schoolgirl known as Gorgeous. She's called this because she is, well, gorgeous. Get used to this trope because we're not shying away from it anytime soon. Gorgeous and her friend Fantasy are doing a photo shoot at school. After they're done, they congratulate a fellow teacher on her engagement. She tells the girls that it's just an arranged marriage and appears unhappy with it. The girls just hear the word marriage and skip off happily as can be, kind of setting a bit of a theme for later on being forced to grow up in that kind of society. Obyashi's odd experimental choices are shown pretty early on, with the photo shoot in the beginning and this odd goodbye scene between Gorgeous and Fantasy. Kind of comes out of nowhere. The first half hour to 45 minutes of the movie is pretty upbeat, setting a tone of youthfulness and childlike wonder as they build these characters up. After arriving home, Gorgeous is met with her dad, who has been away for quite some time. I really wish I could pull off this outfit. This guy definitely has dad riz. She's happy to see him, obviously, and wants to know if he got her a souvenir in Italy, and he definitely did. Gorgeous learns that she has a new stepmommy named Ryoko. Ryoko and her dad got married after some time away. Gorgeous feels betrayed by her father from this marriage, thinking that he moved on from her mom and basically just tried to forget about them. Understandably upset, she runs to her room and, after a brief costume change, she reminisces about her mother. When I first saw this part of the movie, I honestly thought Gorgeous was going to bed with her mom's ashes. I mean, she wasn't. It turned out it was just a box of pictures, but seeing these pictures reminds her of her aunt, whom she hasn't seen in some time. Angry at Ryoko and her father, she writes a letter to her aunt asking if they can visit her for vacation instead. Eventually, she does write back and, in a very ominous way, says yes. And now we are finally introduced to our cast. We have Fantasy, who we've met before. She's called this because she's a bit of a daydreamer. Nowadays, we just would call her a Swiftie. Melody, she's a musician. Sweet, they call her this because she's nice. Imagine if she was kind of a jerk. I mean, I'm pretty sure they just call her a prof because she's a cliche smarty pants. Kung Fu, which feels racist as hell. And Mac, she has diabetes or something. Mac isn't even really that fat. I mean, they kind of just are mean to her for literally no reason, to the point where it gets really uncomfortable at some point. Sometimes it's funnier to not use nuance and just use a ball-peen hammer when it comes to storytelling. We're introduced to Gorgeous's aunt, a thin, older woman in a wheelchair. After the girls arrive at the summer home, right away from the onset, things just go absolutely bananas. So Gorgeous's cat Blanche, who had snuck around for the entire ride, turns out is actually Auntie's cat this whole time. The white cat is actually a motif that is used quite frequently in this movie. It's seen all over the house and is even plastered on the very bus that they arrive in. The girls, after meeting Auntie, present her with a present. A big watermelon. To preserve it, since Auntie's fridge is broken, she suggests they use the well out back to keep it cool. Later, when Mac is sent to retrieve it, she never returns. The girls make a bunch of fat jokes about Mac and how when she went to go get the melon, she got distracted by a potato field nearby, and she instead decided to go eat the potatoes instead. Fantasy goes to look for her and checks on the melon at the same time. When she pulls the melon out of the well, instead she's greeted with Mac's decapitated head. And in a very Evil Dead-like fashion, Mac's head comes to life and attacks her. Fantasy runs and tries to tell the other girls, but nobody believes her because, as her name suggests, she does get lost in fantasy quite often. The film goes from 0 to 60 quite quickly. It literally goes from campy girls cooking, cleaning, having fun, playing piano, to suddenly decapitated heads, walls shooting blood like fire hoses, and pianos eating people. And Gorgeous gets possessed by the spirit of her aunt. One article I read compared if Evil Dead and Yellow Submarine had a baby, and you would get House. We do learn early on that her aunt was never married. She was engaged, but before she could tie the knot with her fiancé was conscripted into the military. Once deployed, he never returned. Auntie would never be a bride. Later, after possessing Gorgeous, we would learn that while waiting for her fiancé to return from the war, she would pass away and become a spirit who would, along with her cat Blanche, eat unmarried girls. For a horror movie, this movie used a lot of uncommonly bright sets. It used vivid skylines, hand-painted effects, stop motion, and a bit egregious amount of chroma key. The editing is a bit eccentric. It gives you the feeling that you just opened up a pop-up book from hell. It reminds me like if Tim and Eric decided to make their own horror movie, or at least edited one. On one hand, House is a standard affair haunted house movie with a bunch of girls, all with cliche trope names, trying to survive the night. On the other hand, it is a metaphor for things like post-war trauma, lost generations, the changing of social values in society, and trying to maintain innocence in a world where the past is constantly trying to reach its way into the present. Another theme explored by Obyashi is the theme of girls' role in society, and as they grow up, how the society treats them or expects them to act like as a woman. That fear of loss of innocence, where a summer trip that is originally masked as just a casual getaway with Gorgeous and her friends, in reality is just an escape, a way for Gorgeous to get away from her family, her responsibilities, and from her father who just remarried. Not to mention the adulthood that waits just a few years down the line. Over the years, this movie has gained a lot of attention. Even back then, apparently, it was a big deal, especially since Obyashi, like I said previously, was just a director for commercials. And being a director for commercials, this being his directorial debut, that influence is repeatedly shown, and some directors, I guess, weren't too fond of him actually making something kind of cool. over the years, there are a lot of things that could appear to have been influenced by Houseu and Obyashi. I would bet serious hard money that the film and series Sweet Home had some kind of influence from House, and in that same way, it in turn inspired Shinji Mikami to create Resident Evil. It's also heavily rumored, but not confirmed, that Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance was inspired by the soundtrack of House to create The Black Parade. It's close, but could most likely be chalked up to somebody just playing around on the piano around the G. But seeing how this fits right in with Gerard's love of weird horror, I wouldn't discount it. At the end of the movie, after a seemingly desperate struggle, the house ultimately wins. Ryoko comes to try and make amends or reach out to Gorgeous. After an exceedingly long sequence in which Gorgeous and Ryoko talk, Ryoko asks Gorgeous where her friends are. Gorgeous replies that they'll be up soon and they'll be hungry. The house had taken all the girls, as shown by the new white cat paintings on the wall. With this, Ryoko combusts, and the film ends with a quote. "Even after the flesh perishes, one can live in the hearts of others together with the feelings one has for them. Therefore, the story of love must be told many times so that the spirits of lovers may live forever. The one thing that never perishes, the only promise, is love." The ending of Houseu is poignant but sad, giving allusions to the horrors of war, happiness turned into chaos, and the tragedy of loss. Obyashi was born in 1938 and had plenty of experience with war. His father serving in World War II as a doctor, and many of his friends from Hiroshima becoming victims of the infamous bombing. And Obyashi said in an interview he wanted to create a story that celebrated his childhood friends who died and mourn all those lost childhoods. The legacy of the movie lives on as a testament of life, wonder, and grief, celebrating that life and love and how we should cherish it at every turn. Thank you once again for coming out and hearing me yap about one of my favorite cult classic horror movies, House. I appreciate all of you beautiful people. Subscribe to the channel and follow me on social media to keep up to date. And until next time, I'm the Lorelock. Cheers, and happy Halloween.